honestly, it's probably more like a conversation.
Cool.
You don't even have to be like, you don't have to be a host.
Cool.
Troy,
Glad to know.
We think you're a very interesting person. Like
That's a good introduction to a start of a video like this.
This is a documentary about Troy Murray, and I'm Olivia. I'm a friend of Troy's, and one of Troy's fans.
What's going on, everybody? So this is the place where all the magic happens. This is where I call my humble abode, the place where everything takes place. Right this way.
Troy is incredible. He's Mr. UTD, he's involved in almost all departments at his university, and he's just a highly motivated, highly successful, and to be frank, he's an inspiration. But let's get into what this documentary is really about, and that's Troy's dancing.
What made you want to do jazz?
Oh, gosh. I think one of the biggest goals I had at the top of the year was that I wanted to do more things and more classes and courses and work that would help me in terms of being a better performer. One of my not best strong suits was in the art of being able to move and being able to do choreography and things of that nature.
I did want to ask, what do you think of Troy's dancing?
I'll be honest, I really haven't seen it much.
Have you seen Troy dance?
Yes, at Hela around the world, and we did this to the right, to the right, to the left, da da, something like that.
Is he a good dancer?
He's a moderate dancer. Sorry, Troy.
Do you think he'll improve?
I really hope. I mean, he'll definitely improve, but yeah. He'll improve, yeah. I mean, yeah.
So, what do you think about Troy's dancing?
He's learning.
So, this might be a weird question to ask, but we're very interested. What do you think of Troy's dancing?
Yeah, they really doubt his ability. But you know, everybody has to start from somewhere.
Hey, how's it going, girl?
Ready to go home.
Absolutely. I wish I could say the same.
Yeah.
My day's just beginning.
It's hard work being Troy Murray. I mean, he's ambitious. He really packs his schedule to the T, and everything he does really well. I mean, Troy's a tour guide. He's an actor with local theaters. He's a student ambassador. He has a 4.0 GPA, a 3.89, yet he still manages to have a social life. I don't think he sleeps. But hey, at least he's famous.
Do you know Troy?
I know of Troy.
Right?
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
Do you know Troy?
Troy?
Do you know him?
Like the ancient Greek figure? Or like...
No, Troy Murray, Mr. UTD.
Yes, of course I know him.
Do you know Troy?
No.
He's famous.
Supposed to know Troy?
But let's go back to seeing how he's progressing with his dancing. Yeah, he's working on it. But you know, in order to understand Troy's dancing journey, we need to understand his origin, starting with his birthplace, Las Vegas, where his mother and father met while working at Treasure Island as bartenders. Troy wasn't always the confident and charismatic person we see today. He was actually very introverted and shy.
I was also not very confident as a kid when I was growing up as well, and for good reason. I was a walking Funko Pop is the easiest way that I can talk about it. Very big head. I was like John Cena haircut, 3 feet tall. Like I weighed like 70 pounds. That like all throughout until I was like in 9th grade of high school. Like literally, it was very unhealthy for me. Not because I didn't like food. I love food. I like to eat. But the problem is that I have a fast metabolism, and so therefore everything just went through my system like a freight train. But at that time, I was also very meager because I wasn't, as developed as I would say compared to the other kids in my classes.
Troy lived in a full household, being the second youngest of 3 siblings, having an older sister, an older brother with autism, and a younger sister. Growing up, his family moved around a lot due to his parents' divorce. His mother, having full custody of Troy and his siblings, sought to provide as the sole income of the household despite making minimum wage.
It was challenging. I think it was challenging for a lot of the family, mainly because my mom was not used to being like a sole breadwinner for a long period of time, which is why I had that time period where I stayed with my aunt for about a year while she was able to go and find new work, get back on her feet, become more financially stable. But my mom is a very big example of like the biggest success story from like rags to riches that I think I've seen in a very long time, because she, for the longest time, was doing these bartending gigs and thinking that that was going to be what she was going to be making a living at. And she worked day in, day out, would be so booked with work to the point where she couldn't like come see some shows that we were doing or like come to like major ceremonies that we had or like family days. She wasn't able to make it because she was consistently working, trying to get enough money to put food on the table. And we highly respected her for that. But it came to a point as well where she was not happy with the work that she was doing. She was just merely doing it for the sake of trying to make ends meet. And it came until a point where we lived in Carson City, where she, her and her boss had a really back and forth relationship where they were just like, the boss was never satisfied with her work, yet my mom consistently worked all the time. And it just came to a point where like the immovable force met the irresistible object. And they just said, you know what, we're going to have to let you go. And then she decided, you know what, let's go back to the place where it all began. And that's when we went back to Vegas. And that's from there where she discovered that she wanted to try a new industry, which has led her to doing wedding travels. So she worked for a wedding venue where like couples would call in and they would be like, oh, we want to go do a wedding in like this destination area. And they would like help with planning the logistics, booking the hotels, getting the travel to and from, basically handling all those ailments. And it was from her work that she did there that she got all the industry knowledge that she needed, broke off on her own, and now she's one of the top performing wedding travel venue establishments in the United States.
Although Troy's mom was his number one supporter, his extended family, such as his grandfather and grandmother, played a large role in developing him to be the person he is today. Now let's go back to Troy practicing his dancing. Yeah, he's still practicing.
Nice.
After leaving home to go to university, Troy made a lot of friends who have supported him throughout his academic and musical career, occasionally having game nights.
A blanket, pillows, people.
And giving Troy gifts.
And for some reason, every time that I have like birthdays or something, people are always going, oh yeah, they always ask, what do you want? Like, I don't want to be impersonal. So then I'm like, oh, I like custom made things. I'm always a big fan of like, if they like tie into a specific memory or something that we love together, like, that's kind of what I look for. Apparently when I say that, everybody thinks, oh, that means I'm going to draw a freaking self-portrait of you. So literally this whole wall is like dedicated on this, like over on this end, just completely just of self-portraits, fan art. Like, yeah, so literally that's
He's getting better.
somewhat decent.
With Troy being such a confident and performative person, many people, even his friends, make assumptions about him.
my most recent relationship, she was like convinced for the longest time too. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it was so funny because when we first started going out, her best friend first mentioned it to her. She was all just like, "Hey, are you sure that he's not gay?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And she's just like, "I don't know, just the way that he acts, the way that his mannerisms are, just, I get a vibe." And I'm like, okay, is that the way that you want to like interpret it? Like, so she was very skeptical from the very big time period. And what makes it worse though is that like, I don't get me wrong, I very much cherish the relationships that I have with the partners that I've had in the past, but I have this bromance with my current best friend. His name's Brandon, and like we just have like this running joke that's between the both of us where like everyone assumes that we're a couple, because like whenever we like host game nights or stuff, we'll collaborate in order to make it happen, or like whenever we go to like a birthday party where there's a bunch of couples there, we'll go with each other, and so people think that we're together going to the event, and it just gets so funny after a while because people often are like, "Are you sure you're not in a relationship?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" With Brandon, I'm like, "No, what are you talking about?" In terms of me having a bromance with my best friend, some people take it literally, some people see that it's a joke. Sometimes I have to explain the joke for people for them to understand, and then they have to be all like, "Oh, so you're not having a bromance? Like, where's the girl then?" And then like I'll show them pictures of me and her together, and then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's a lie. That's just a cover-up story." And for the longest time that happened, and it makes it worse because now I'm single, and everybody thinks, "Oh no, his next partner is gonna be a guy. Just you wait, and I'm like, "Oh no."
A lot of people continue to make these assumptions because of his interests and talents, but Troy actually credits his performative nature to growing up and sharing a room with his brother.
I think it kind of stems back to early childhood development for me too, because when I when I was growing up, I was very close with my older brother, and once again, as I mentioned, he has autism, and so there was time periods where when we were first growing up, that my mom was still struggling financially, and we would be like, "Oh yeah, the brothers are gonna share a bed together," and so like me and my older brother would just be like lying in our room some nights, just not able to go to bed, and my brother had this thing where he would like recite movies and TV shows just word for word, like literally just completely well cited, full with like sound effects and like all these other crazy things, and he would just be voicing it out loud just while I'm trying to go to sleep, so much so to the point where I was a little bit annoyed at it by first. I was like, "Gosh, can I just go to bed?" But then like it came to a point where I just started picking up on it, and then I started memorizing things with him, so much so that my mom thought when I was in the middle of growing up, and she would, I kid you not, she'd be walking by our bedroom sometime in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden we're reciting like an episode of Regular Show or something, and then all of a sudden she would like look at me, and then she'd look at my sisters, and she'd be like, "I think he might be developing something." So much so no, literally. So like my mom had me tested from an early age, thinking that I was somewhere on the spectrum as well, which I haven't gotten like an official test nowadays, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was somewhere on the spectrum, just because people often look at me and they're like, "Okay, he's either flamboyant or he's gay. He's not any of the anything else in between." You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Well, I'm not the second category, so guess it means I'm just more." But no, it just came to a point where I'm a lot more spontaneous, and so people say, "Oh, because he is more talkative, because he's more performative, because he's just more in touch with who he is as a person." People like would assume that was the case, but then my mom thought, "Oh, maybe it's because he's on the spectrum." I still haven't been diagnosed with anything yet, but if someone were to come up to me one day and be like, "He has ADHD," I'd be like, "I'm not surprised." Nice.
Earlier, we mentioned Troy's grandfather being an influence in his life.
Can you tell us a little bit about his grandfather?
Yeah, I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna tell you. It's only been 5 years since he passed, and my kids bring him up. At least one of my kids will bring him up every single day, because that's how much of an impact he had on our lives. He was just he was a better father figure to the kids than anybody that we had in our lives, and he was always there to kind of do what Troy does. He would make light of a situation if he felt like something was getting a little too tense or was about to get tense. He'd come in with something really funny and make everybody laugh and forget about what they were going to fight about.
So he was kind of, I'm trying to put it into words because it's just he was just my grounded individual. From an early childhood phase, he was the person where whenever my mom and my dad were working late nights at Treasure Island and they were busy working their bartending shifts, because they would have to work ridiculous times throughout the day. So much so that we came to a point where me and my siblings couldn't be left home alone, so we would always go to my grandparents. But while my grandma was more worried about taking care of the things around the house, making sure we had clean bed sheets and making sure that we had food and making sure that everything else around the house was well taken care of, my grandfather was the person that would sit down and watch cartoons with us. He was the person that would talk to us about our days, and it's so much so that even mundane tasks like going to the bank, because he would need to go cash checks for sometimes, and he would literally get us into a car and he would start singing little songs of oh, we're on the road and we're driving, and he would just saying we're on our way to Magicola FLA and all this other stuff, and just trying to indulge us in these little conversations. We would just start joining in with him. So he was just always that person that if you were in a movie setting and somebody that was just always that constant, or somebody that you always kind of turn to, he was just always that person that I could always go and talk to with at the end of the day and have no sense of judgment. He would give me his undivided attention, and he was also the person that made me really obsessed with game shows, because all the time we would just be sitting on the couch watching Family Feud and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and all this stuff, and he would just be consistently getting me ingrained, so much so that I now watch Family Feud clips in my spare time whenever I'm just sitting around, even despite the fact that he passed away, what was it, 3-4 years ago? Yeah, but he's still always with me. I have a picture of him in my wallet everywhere that I go. All the ties that I wear nowadays, with the exception of 5 or 6, are all the ones that my grandma gave me of his after he had passed away. So he's been with me at all my major events, always been there whenever I've been succeeding professionally. So yeah, he was just always there for me whenever I needed it most.
If he was here right now and seeing everything that you're doing, what do you think he would tell you, or what do you think he would say?
The same thing he's been telling me since I was a young boy, which was that he was very proud of me. Which was one of the last memories that I had with him, was when he was in the hospital bed and he was in the midst of recovering. There was a time period where he was fighting cancer, and the problem was that he recovered from it. During this time in the hospital bed, he recovered from that, went back home for a couple of weeks, and then had to get back to the hospital because it was just his time. But anyway, it was during that time in the hospital bed when we were just talking with him. His memory was kind of going away at that time, and we were just showing him pictures of stuff that was going on, and he was asking me, he was all oh, so what do you got going on in school? Because even in the face of death, my grandfather was the person that was just asking how was your day at school, let's talk about you, what's going on. And I was telling him about some of the work that I was doing, because I was a junior in high school at the time. And I was telling him, I was oh, I just got named as team captain for my improv team. I'm getting involved in some stage shows. I'm the team captain for our varsity quiz team, and I'm succeeding in all my AP classes. And he was always just the person that was I don't expect anything less from you, son. And he would always just tell me about how everything was going to be okay. He would always remind me no matter how bad the world may fall on me, to always just have that sense of optimism, always just to look on the bright side of life, just kind of making sure that nobody stopped me from being who I was. And so it was that was just one of the, gosh, I'm getting emotional from this. But he was always the person that just reminded me that I should always stick to my values and stick to my roots, and make sure that no matter how hard times may get, to always just make sure that everything was going to be okay and just stay true to myself. I feel like that I've become more and more used to the idea of failure, because failure doesn't determine who you are as a person. It determines how well you can get back up from a failure. That determines your work ethic and who you are as an individual. So I think that's kind of where my relationship with success, like I appreciate the success that I have, but also anytime that I get like a major accolade or like an award for something, I'm just like, it's because I did my job. You know what I mean? It's not like a thing where like, oh, like I'm gonna brag about this because it's something that I did. It's just something of like, okay, cool. I did what I needed to do. What's going on to my next project, and see what other things I can achieve. It's like a stepping stone in terms of where I want to be able to make it at the end of the day. But in terms of that failure aspect, though, I wouldn't have the success that I've had without falling on hard times as a result, for sure.
At the end of our interview, we asked Troy if he thought he will be a good dancer, and to give us a rating out of 10.
Give it like a 7.5, like an 8-ish. Sure, 8 is the...
We're going to see.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll see, all right.
It's so easy when you know what you're doing. It's so easy when you know how. It's so easy when you know what you're doing. It's so easy when you're doing it now. I know that your love was my undoing, but it's your money that got in the way. Whenever things they got a little trouble, you pack it up and take a holiday. It's so easy when you know what you're doing. It's so easy when you know how. It's so easy when you know what you're doing. It's so easy when you're doing it now. We've got to trust each other blindly. Only then will we have eyes to see. What we make of life, it never comes easy. Our hearts are tempered by adversity. Just as the baby cries out for its mother, so we all have to cry out for each other.